pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Do we have any translation needs for tonight? Okay, seeing none, then we'll go on to the approval of the agenda with a updated document under C1-10 in the agenda.
I motion to approve the updated agenda.
And I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so carries. Next, B1, public comment. We have one request. Jake Mendez.
Hello everyone, I'm Jake Mendez Jr. I'm an activist and an ACLU Washington member. I just want to comment on from last week's school board meeting. I just mainly want to just keep this generic and general. As far as like security camera goes, it's just the details of the fact that the parent that spoke up described as the camera to be very scrambled and not really, to describe what's really who's doing what. So that's one of the things I want to address on, to see if you guys could go ahead and enhance the cameras, see if you could find a way where it's more visual of what's going on. So this way, if something does happen, if a child is abducted or if there's a school shooter on the premises, you could at least identify who the person is or who the abductor is. And that's just one of the things that I just want to address, to make sure to just keep that in mind. Because it's pretty tragic for parents to come up to these schools and want to find evidence and proof, and yet there's nothing that the school could show because of the low quality of the camera that you guys have. And also, lastly, I just want to thank the Othello Police Department and the Adams County Sheriffs for their efforts and works, even though these are false threats. But however, they show forth what they're proving to secure the schools in the community of Othello. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. B2, recognition.
Yeah, a little bit of a different presentation this evening. We don't have someone in-house for recognition, but I did want to let the community know and invite the board to a special opportunity. There's an organization called CWASA, which is our area association for WASA, the Washington Association of School Administrators. They do a banquet annually where they honor retirees and individuals who have made a significant contribution to public ed. It's a lot of teachers, maybe former board members, and then there's also a student and community component. Well, we have a couple in town that we nominated for a CWASA award. It's Greg and Diana Brault. They supported a number of students last year for an exciting leadership opportunity. And many of those students, in fact, were recognized at Scholarship Night. And they were also really active this year in leadership opportunities at OHS. So the intended outcomes of the opportunity they had last summer, we got to see it in action. So really significant contribution by the Brault family. We nominated them and they've been awarded this recognition. So we're gonna send you the details if you all would like to attend, just so you have a general idea. Certainly an email invitation will follow, but it's next Wednesday, the 31st at 5 p.m. at the Meadow Springs Country Club in Richland. And we'll get you the details and just a confirmation whether or not there'll be 3 board members or more. So again, you're more than welcome to attend. We'll honor the Braults that night. And perhaps if you're not able to be there, we could invite them in for another meeting this summer. But really excited for their investment in our kids.
Thank you. Next is board member discussion. I really haven't got a legislative report, but I did have a chance to speak to all of our local representatives at another meeting here a couple weeks ago. They're very interested in getting together with us. So we're going to try to plan something for this summer where we can all get together and meet up with them. I did have a chance to talk to him a little bit about building funding, additional funding for structures and stuff. And I guess Senator Schuessler was there, and he did have something, but it just barely missed the vote by a couple of votes to get it passed to help in that area. The next one is new house proposal. Yes, I guess you would probably know about that one a little bit more.
Yeah, so when I was in DC in the first part of May, I met with an educational policy writer with our congressman's office, and just spoke to him about issues in general. He told me he was working on some legislation, and I offered to be a resource and look at that and try and pass it around and get him information. He sent that to me last week. He is trying to work on a lot of funding over the next year for safety nurses and security in schools. This particular bill that he sent to me is focused around providing education and funding in the form of a grant for Narcan and Narcan training for security people, purchasing the Narcan kits, lots of awareness training, those types of things. It doesn't fix every problem that we have. We have lots of things that need funding, but it is one small piece. The best thing about what he has written for us as a small community is that half of that it's $5 million right now. If that moves through the House, that would be funded for that. And that's from federal dollars, so it goes a lot of places, but half that money goes to rural communities that meet that criteria that the Secretary defines. So.
Thank you. And just something that's not on there, but I'll just remind everybody, WASDA has a training, regional training night coming up this Thursday in Pasco.
Is this the, I know we have a series of classes that are mandatory that we take, that we could have signed up for at WASDA, but they were all sold out. Like they were overbooked, so we couldn't go to them. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Is that what this is?
I do not. They had a couple of topics of discussion. Let me see what they are here.
I know they were gonna make some options available for the people who didn't get in WASDA, but it's required classes for all school board members. I can't even remember the topic.
What's in store, top issues facing school boards today. They look at the legal policy and leadership implications.
It wasn't that. Do you remember what it was,
No,
Sharon?
but I remember that we couldn't get in.
Yeah,
Equity was the one I
Marisa,
think. you're-
equity?
No.
Equity.
Was it? I thought we went to that one.
It was a new one that they started, and we were, anyway. At some point, we either have to schedule that for training for just our board,
Mhm.
or we have to go to like a night that they're hosting somewhere else to get that
Yes,
training
and
done.
eventually I hope they're offering that class online,
Yeah,
like
that would be nice.
a couple others they've had.
This one on Thursday is only in person, is that correct?
Yes, it is. And I guess if you want to register for it, you can get hold of Marisa and she will. Okay,
As of right now, is anyone planning on attending that? Are you going, Ken?
no, I will be out of town.
I'm not going either.
I can't go that night.
Okay, any further board member discussion?
Ken, I will add a component around the required trainings. We will send you a link to the WASDA landing page that describes those trainings, the legislation behind it, and the virtual options that are available.
Okay,
So we'll just make sure that we get you that link here tomorrow.
thank
Okay,
you.
great, thank you. We'll go on to student representative report. Gael?
I don't really have much of a report. It was just kind of like a thank you to you guys. I don't know if you want to do that right now or like at the end of the meeting. It's up to you guys.
Well, I do appreciate your time. that you have served with us. I know tonight will be your last night.
Mm.
I don't know if Pete had something?
Yeah, I'll certainly say a few words and start us off, and then maybe we'll have Gael finish with kind of his thank you for the group. But when I think about the intent of the Othello School District and what we hope to produce, it's quality graduates, right? People that can go out and develop and serve our community, and I think Gael is certainly representative of that. He's always struck me as very mature, and the more that I've been around him over the last year, that certainly continues to be true. He's got a calm and kind nature. I've never seen him get too riled up or too down about things, and I've appreciated his steady input into our meetings. And I guess the last thing I would share that I appreciate about Gael is his thoughtfulness. It's not always just about him or his context. He's of all the board members I've been around in the last 7 or 8 years, students or adults, he's taken more notes than all of them combined. When Gael goes into those schools, he has a notepad and he's taking notes. And when we stand with adults in the hallway, he provides thoughtful commentary on what he saw. And the same thing about the cookies and conversations. He doesn't just listen, he takes notes and he goes back and he processes that. And so I really have appreciated that thoughtfulness and Gael's calm and kind presence on the board. So really appreciated your work, Gael, and we wish you the best.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just want to say, Gael, not to stereotype young men, but typically we have a lot of young ladies that are interested in serving on the school board, and it was such a breath of fresh air to have you on the school board that now I never want to go without a male student rep on the board ever again. You have set such a high bar, and you have been such a great example and have shown us really, it's really easy to feel like, oh, this next generation. My grandparents used to do that about my generation, and now that I'm getting older, I hear my generation doing that about the upcoming generation. And I just have to say that because of you and the other student reps we've had, but especially because of the example you have set as our first young man on the school board, I have to defend your generation and say that's not true. Not all those things are true, because I know Gael, and I know what kind of person you are, and you've been exemplary, and I'm just so grateful that I got to know you as a person, that I've got to know you as an adult now, and I'm so excited to follow along your journey because I know you have great things ahead for you. And I'm just so grateful for all that you've done on the school board and for all the students that you have represented, because you have represented them well. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I think when we started out, I thought, this is the shyest young man. He is not going to talk to any of us. He's not going to say anything. And he blossomed. He was a flower that absolutely blossomed. And I'm so happy that we all got to know you so well. I mean, personally, besides on the board, but we just visiting with him. He's a wonderful person to just visit with, a young man. And yes, we all wish you the best of everything, because you've brightened our lives. Really, you have.
Thank
And it's been fun.
It has.
It has.
Thank you.
Gael, I really appreciated the time that you have served on this board. You've brought some great ideals to this board. You've definitely stepped up the game for student representatives, and I think we're going to have a tradition that I hope carries on every year with the cookies. I really appreciate that. It's really gave us a good opportunity to get the insight of students throughout the district, which we're always trying to gain a little bit more of. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I've only been here for a few weeks, but some of us are watching when we're not here too. And I want to say and echo some of what has already been said, but I feel like as a student rep, you have brought new and innovative ideas, and you're not afraid to share that and try something new, to really engage and bring out conversation in people. And I agree, you have set the bar extremely high, and you've done well.
Thank you. I just want to appreciate you guys for giving me this opportunity. I couldn't have asked for, better set of people to serve with. You guys just made this experience so enjoyable, and you guys are amazing people. Oh wow. I don't know. I just appreciate you, everything you guys have done for me and helping me, find my voice and not be afraid to share my ideas and actually listen to my ideas and, give constructive criticism. So I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, I'm glad I could show you who's the real champion at the axe throwing. It was me. I beat you every time. Just kidding.
Okay, we will go on to C1, required approvals.
I make a motion that we
Uh,
approve.
I just actually have a quick question
Okay.
before we motion to approve these, sorry. I had a question about a couple of line items on the accounts payable. On page 3, there is a fairly large amount to Lake Shore learning materials that was just bigger than the last 2 items that I had seen earlier this year. So I was just questioning that amount of $14,288.39. And then on the following page, actually that might have been page 2, and then now page 3, is for Riften equipment. There was a charge for $7,651.63, which is not somebody who I have seen on an accounts payable yet this year.
Yep, so I'll provide the information for, certainly for the rest of the board and for the community. The invoices for Lakeshore, those are for classrooms, supplies and materials. And certainly the amount could vary from month to month. But at the end of the school year, as teachers are attempting to use their zero-based budget and expend those resources, that's why it might vary month to month. Just depends on teacher and classroom need. The one about Riften, as Marisa looks for that one, that was a company that provides wheelchairs, specialized chairs, and accessories for some of our students that have those needs. These items are purchased when those needs are identified and they become necessary. So again, they could be replacement components, things again for students receiving special services in the school district.
Okay, thank you so much.
I need a motion on the required approvals.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve required approvals.
I second. Go ahead.
Any further discussion? All in
No.
favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? So carries. And superintendent's informational items.
Yeah, I'm going to invite Rigo Zuner, Greg Foltz, and Tim Taft Ford to sit at the table, get a couple chairs, and get comfortable. We want to spend some time sharing with the board and with the community and call back to a presentation that we used last year in describing the Safe School Initiative in the Othello School District. Now, in your packet for board members and those watching at home, the grayed out slides, those are slides that were pulled directly from a presentation we did, I believe in July of last year with the same team. And we talked about this idea about school safety. Where are we at in this continuum? That, do we have our head in the sand? Are we doing as much as we can? And part of this was about making sure we communicate with folks what really is happening. We described that there are multiple layers to school safety, not just what you can feel and touch. There was some comment this evening about the cameras. We heard some of that last board meeting, and that's really sort of that physical digital component. But we know there are all sorts of components to school safety. I just wanted to remind you about some of the items we talked about in positive school culture, and that being what I believe is the most important factor, and that's we have good people who care about kids and kids who care about each other, and we look out for one another, and when we see something, we say something, we feel connected, and like we belong to a community of learners. It's also important that our staff get the training they need, so we wanted to share with you and remind you and the community about some of the outstanding trainings that have been provided for our staff over the last several years. And those trainings continue. Exercises and tabletops to think about these activities. Those require partnerships with our community resources, Othello Police Department, Adams County Sheriff's Office, Adams County Emergency Management, those kinds of folks coming to the table. And I think Tim's going to share a larger scale community activity that we're going to be involved in. So those things, again, continue to happen. We talked about some of the things that already exist around physical and digital components and things that we're using. You can see that cameras was listed. And based on the community input the last couple of times, Rigo is going to provide some clarity around the kinds of cameras we have and the intended usage. And I think Greg might provide some historical context around that. Emergency response, these are some components that Tim Taff has led for us. And the threat and risk assessment, I've talked to other superintendents in our region and across the state, and I would put our process up with anyone out there. It's really, really high level, really good people leading that work. Certainly a strong partnership with our school resource officers, those kinds of things, really key things happening in our community. We also talked last time about unintended consequences, and these might be things that you hear about from other folks. Some of these items catch fire on social media, and it looks like it might be a good idea, and hey, they're doing it, why aren't we? But that there are sometimes unintended consequences from these kinds of things. And so that's why it's important to have experts like Greg Foltz, like Tim, and like Rigo to help us think through these things. At that time, we talked about some considerations and possible next steps for the school district. And that's what we're here to talk about today. We want to share with you some next steps that I've already invested in, some steps that we're taking to enhance our protocols even just a little bit more. And so that's where the team is going to jump in and share with you some of those next steps.
Okay, so I'll go first. Something you're going to see next school year in the fall is you're going to see some buzz-in doors at our schools. We're implementing this at 6 of the 7 campuses. It'll be a video camera buzz-in with an electronic door. So the doors can be open in the morning to allow students to come and go, and then they can be locked. And someone coming in can come into the foyer, out of the weather, still have some personable no interaction, but still come into the building, get out of the weather, push a button. One of the secretaries will be able to view the person on their phone, interact with them with voice, and remotely let them in if needed. So we're currently installing this right now. We were trying to get it done before the end of the school year, but it was hard to get the parts in time. So. Next slide.
One of the components about that that we're going to have to figure out as we get into the school year next year is the flow of the school. Again, as Greg indicated, there might be times, high traffic times, where those doors are open. But are we going to have someone there providing active supervision? What does it do for a school day when a teacher might send a kid to the office for something or to ask for a resource? How do we train kids and train staff around these components? So there will be a level of staff and student training as well. But what Greg described is the experience that community members would feel when they come to the school.
Yes, and in conversations with the principals at each site, there won't be just implementation of this at the main entrance for the staff. Some of the schools will have this at a back door for other portable students.
Just gonna ask.
Some principals said no, we've got it figured out. We have a system that works. We don't want that at this time. But then some said, no, can we look at adding this to some other doors? Mm-hmm. So it's like everything else. We're going to start with one thing and just keep working into it. And so the one school that we are not implementing this at this time is the high school, because their system is working for them. And so I just put together this little map right here of what we have existing at the high school already. The green dots are electronic doors. They can be remotely locked and unlocked. And then the purple dots are the electronic roll-up doors for the office that they can open when they want to be visible, and they can push the button and the door will just come down automatically if they need to. So just wanted to give a little visual context to the one school that wasn't going to be moving that direction at this time.
So Greg, the high school's one I was worried about a separate entrance in because there's so many portables and different sections out there. How do they do it now? I know you get locked in right now, since they're not going to implement it at the high school, what are they going to do for the back door? The back doors? Coming into the corridor.
Ultimately, right now, the best way is to keep doing it the way we're doing it and keep the visual aspect. They have security staff on site who are roaming around. They're checking things. They're watching cameras where the other schools don't.
Okay.
That's
And
true.
when you think about 1,500 students, especially at the beginning of the day, they're not all going to come through this front door. Our campus is very open. We have to work on that too. And, you know, it's just going to be layers and keep moving forward in steps. At some point, we'll get to the aspect where we think maybe the campus is enclosed and we can leave some doors open and not worry about it, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah, no.
No.
And it takes time and money.
Takes time and money.
One of the other components about secondary schools that I know I have learned over the last year in some of the trainings and conferences that I've been to, and I know that Greg and perhaps Tim have been to some of these trainings as well, but when you listen to national experts about school violence, particularly around school shootings, that so much of the data around secondary schools is that it's someone from the campus, someone that belongs at that school. So they're typically in and out of the building on a typical day. At the elementary sites, it's someone outside of the facility. So even the data would tell you that it makes a lot more sense at the elementary level as a form of control and entry into the school. But again, those unintended consequences, if we're forcing 1,500 kids through one door, what does that do to the flow and the feel of that high school? And are we really getting the safety component that we think we are? And at this time, we don't believe that we are.
Yeah, every action has a reaction, like Pete says, and even the best laid plans have flaws, right? When Chief Shank and I and SRO Carlson went to North Carolina and we visited a high school down there, and we did a week-long risk assessment training. They had keypad door lobs so that the teachers, and they changed the code every week to the number so that they could get in the exterior doors. And we sat there and watched kids go in and out of that door all day long. The teachers just gave the codes out. So when we looked at this stuff, and Pete asked us to keep moving forward, we wanted to do what was fiscally responsible, what we felt would work, and we sat down, and that's why it takes a little time. We sit down and talk about it, and like, well, what about this, and what about that? So we can try to mediate those unintended consequences. And we think with the system that we've picked, it should be mediating those pretty well.
Next slide. So we want to just give an update of some of the things we've tried to check off the list in the last year. One of them is an ID badge policy. We actually put that in the employee handbook. We want you to wear your ID everywhere so that you're identifiable. So that, and in fact, Ed was helping a little bit to get the pictures a little bigger so you don't have to get right down and squint at that, so it's easily visible. We mentioned the openness of the high school. One of the ideas with the security gate on the back to close that, we had a lot of traffic coming through there.
Yes.
And then you have a passing and vehicular traffic, and so we're trying to, another stage, well, there are people who've discovered you can drive around that gate on the grass. Try to discourage it, but we've minimized with our transportation department how many buses actually go in there, which ones need to go in. We're still working on the traffic flow of it, because we've watched cameras a few days where parents just come backwards in it, and then they turn around and go back out. And there was one day we had a milk truck unloading. We had kids coming to school trying to walk across that parking lot, and then people making U-turns in the middle of it as well. So there's work to do, and it's part of its habit training as well. Raptor Visitor Management, we just purchased this system. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out what's feasible, what's realistic, and what is fiscally responsible. I think one of the things we're trying to implement, we believe can be built upon, and they're not going to lock us into one thing. We can only do this, and then we got to throw it away when we go to the next step. So we tried to look at, be wise about the investment to say, okay, let's get our foot in the door this way, kind of metaphorically, and then we could build upon it, and we can build upon it and build upon it, and eventually have what we want. It'll expand. What we're trying to invest in can be expanded to what we want to end up with. Raptor is a background check, so it would add on to this kind of electronic entrance. It would actually scan a person's ID and give a quick background check if they're in a database. It doesn't do a criminal background check, which takes a little longer, but do an instant background check to make sure they're not on any awareness databases. The emergency exercises, we try to make them practical rather than scheduled, because emergencies, we haven't found an emergency yet that is on a schedule. And so the high school and the middle school both are looking at preparation of running some of their drills at passing times, spontaneously, having staff other than administration make a call, make an all call. We're in lockdown. Have them familiar with how to make an all call. Not all campuses were familiar that we could even do that. And we knew that they could. It's just a matter of training that, but then also being wise about, okay, but we don't want to abuse it. How do we get everybody knowledgeable but not pass out the code so that everybody has it, and we end up with kids using an all call for an emergency. So trying to find the balance is what we're working at as well.
Just wanted to provide one reminder for the board and the community. The incident that we had at Hiawatha several weeks ago, think of that as an exercise for those students. 95, 98% accuracy, the way that they responded and the adults responded. So we debrief and we think about the other 2%. How do we get just a little bit better? But the systems worked, the kids did what they were supposed to, and so did the adults. The swatting incident that we had at Othello High School just a couple of weeks ago, where it was, occurred in many school districts in eastern Washington. School got locked down. There was active supervision. OPD in Adams County showed up. The systems worked. There were some communication things we think we could do better. But again, you get about 95% right, and then you think about it. So we take those opportunities, even though they feel like true emergencies, and they are. There are also opportunities for us to think about our systems and whether or not they worked.
Yeah. Just to reiterate on what Pete said, the whole incident at Hiawatha, we figured it lasted 90 seconds from the time that the officer came on the property till the person was in custody. And we're like, wow, that was a great practice.
Yeah.
And a staff person called the all call. A kid actually saw it first, told his staff, and so I mean, you'll take those wins as you can and try to learn from them and grow on them. Another idea with identification, we have support staff that works through the buildings all the time. Who are they? Why are they there? Name tag wise, as a maintenance person, it doesn't really work to have a lanyard. It's not always safe for that to be around their neck when they're using machinery. So what if they had a uniform where I identified everybody who's wearing this staff shirt or with a logo on it? And either maybe have a patch on one side and a school logo on the other. But other ways to just identify in the crowd. Where's the security person? There they are. Where's the custodian? There they are. Oh, that's a maintenance person. Oh, that's tech. And so just another layer. Okay, we got this ID, that ID. These people belong. These people don't, and we need to be aware. So that's kind of that next step. The why, just for identification, how we're working on, now we're getting bids and who does what in what town and what do they carry. So we're moving forward on that as well. Any questions up to this point? I know, sorry.
I just think that Lindsay and I have visited about it, and we think some type of uniform, a vest, or anything would be so beneficial, because a lot of times staff wonders who's walking around, even though they're working. So this would help anyone in the offices. No, I think it'd be wonderful. And the kids would understand and see them and have respect.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even at our board meetings, sometimes there's different people here from the IT department that run the microphones and stuff, and it's like, oh, I've never seen that person before. So, I mean, yes, I think that that's a great idea. I know that a training that Pete and I went to, along with Ken and some other people from the board, said that most of the errors that happen are human errors. You can do all the things right. You can have all the locked doors, you can have but when you're giving out the code and it's human error and you got a door propped open, and even though you have a sign there that says under no circumstances can you prop this door open, but you've got it propped open, like it's just human error. So one of my big questions from tonight was about training, and I think we're getting there. So.
Who's that model, by the way?
Seriously.
Okay, so as Pete mentioned before, a little historical context. Lindsay, you said you're getting old. I know I'm getting old because I can sit here and say, I think I'm the only one who was here when we put cameras in for the first time, the first round of cameras. Carlos was working here. You were here, but I don't know if, You guys, I don't know if you were part of the conversation, if you were in administration yet, but. So, originally, we set out to put cameras in, and we have none of the original cameras left in the system.
Okay.
That's how long it's been, back before 2008. And we sat down and said, we need cameras. It was original intent, let's cover our buildings. Let's see who's coming and going inside our buildings. It wasn't to catch someone doing something wrong or catch someone, an accident in the parking lot. We wanted to see just who was coming and going from the buildings. And at those cameras, you focused them on the door, and everything else was blurry around it. And so as we continue to upgrade our cameras and then move into the 21st century, we're moving towards exactly what we want and what our community wants. What we heard tonight is, better cameras, more views, things like that. So I just wanted to give that historical aspect that we weren't using them to watch students 15, well, it's almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
So, but now we've evolved into that.
What's the longevity of those cameras? Like 3 years, 5 years?
Usually we're probably seeing around, I want to say 6 years
Okay.
before we have to replace one.
Okay.
There are a rule about IT, right?
Yeah.
Technology changes every 18 months.
Yes.
So could we replace them at that time? But like Greg says earlier, is that we want to be fiscally responsible when
Yeah.
it comes to this kind of stuff. So when Greg was talking about the original 10 of the camera views, we're looking at possibly 150 views, camera views when it came to these buildings. So what my staff and I have been doing this past year is we added another 5 cameras this year. So each of those cameras are four views per camera. So we've added about another 20 views. We are currently replacing 23 cameras based off a security grant that we received.
Okay, good.
And so we're replacing 23 older cameras. That's going to help with the quality of the image this year. We're also replacing camera bubbles. And I'll speak a little bit on the camera bubbles like here in the next slide. But those are going to be replaced throughout the whole district, and hopefully we'll be finishing up before the school year starts next year.
Really quick, Rigo, is that 5 cameras total for the whole district, or is that like per campus?
It was for the whole district.
For the whole district, okay.
3 of them, I think 3 of those cameras were at the high school.
Okay.
And just one piece tying in the historical expertise that Greg provides and what Rigo's sharing about typical rates of when you replacement cycle, is that what you call it in tech? So this replacement cycle, again, in public comment, we certainly appreciate the public coming in and interacting with us, but I think it's also important that the community understand that the Othello School District for the last 10 or 15 years has made significant investment in cameras. Rigo's going to show you some of those views and show you what we have, and perhaps the experience that some of those individuals had with our system, maybe it didn't get to where they wanted, but we would challenge the quality of our cameras. They are functioning very well. Our administrators use them probably daily, and others in our system. So I just want to make sure that if the narrative is out there that we don't have cameras and they don't work at all, that is not accurate.
So, we'll go next slide. So as we mentioned before, when we first started off, we're about 150 views. Right now, we're at 782 camera views for the entire district and stuff. So it has morphed into something that's really a big beast, basically you would call it. So if you add those next 5 cameras, we're going to be at 802 camera views for this upcoming school year. And that's throughout the whole district. The majority of the cameras are on motion detection for recording, and that's basically because what we want to do is we want to be able to restore or to retain data and stuff, because usually we get requests almost about a week or 2 old when somebody comes like, hey, I want to see something that happened on this date. And so in order to provide that kind of service, we have to make sure that they're on motion recording. As you can see, this is kind of my geekiness is coming out right here. But so you have an entire infrastructure and stuff. Our entire infrastructure for the school district is about 260 terabytes of information that we have on servers. We have 146.4 terabytes just dedicated to camera retention of videos. That's more than half. So we have data that the entire district uses, and then we have this other data that's more than what the staff uses just for camera retention. And so that's what we have dedicated to here. And so when those public records requests comes in, my department will pull the cameras, and we will go through the footage, and we will blur out any kids' faces that appear on the video that are identifiable. and stuff, and that usually takes quite a bit of time. So this is the general information that we have about our cameras. Like Pete says, they're all working. If you want to go to the next slide, Marisa.
How long, really quick, Rigo, how long do we hold on to those videos?
So they're viewed by security and building administrators constantly, policing constantly. We usually have about 12 to 14 days and stuff. So the sooner, the better or stuff, and just to make sure that we have it. And that's where, about that time. Now, I said these are for motion recording, so it's in high traffic areas, it might be 12. In low traffic areas, probably like around the summer, we might have a little bit more than 14 because it's on motion recording. And so that's how we do that.
Okay.
Legal precedent.
Yeah. And as Pete says, we work very hard in the department to make sure that all the videos are run. We even have, they're called scheduled tasks in our help desk that remind my staff to go in there and look at each camera to make sure that there is no video loss. And then from there, we also have another scheduled task that checks the recording of every camera to make sure that there is recording that's happening. If there's not recording that's happening, we end up escalating it to either Adam Perez, who is our operations IT specialist, or to even Ednetics, who is our IT consultants that we have a contract with our video surveillance as well. So we try to do as much as we can. We have experts upon experts to make sure these cameras are working because we know security is a big deal for the district, and we try to ensure that this works the best that it possibly can.
So Rigo, oh, excuse me. I was gonna say, are each school have a base to watch them? Are they all within your building, or is there
Yes.
duplicates?
So basically, each building administrator is responsible for their own
Okay.
building. IT, of course, has access to all cameras.
Okay,
That's how we check them all the time. But normally, I've been into a couple principals' office. They, most of them have an additional TV that hooks up to their computers
okay,
where they have the cameras up on that screen. And so they're able to do, we have
Good.
SROs at the high school that do
Okay.
the same thing. They have a dedicated computer that's
Yes.
dedicated to the cameras, and they have that up and running themselves. We have the McFarland security staff that's there. Like Joanna and now Joey, they have the cameras up constantly as
Yeah.
well. They're always pulling videos, footage of there,
that's good.
just in case. So they're constantly being viewed.
Oh, good. No,
Each building administrators are pretty much on top of it, especially when reports happen.
yeah, we weren't like negative against
Yeah,
it. We
no.
just didn't know.
Yeah. No, I get it. So that's kind of what we're facing with the general information. If you want to go to the next slide.
I just wanted to provide one comment and a word of caution around the number of camera views. And this is actually something I learned from Greg when I was a building principal. It might have been as an assistant principal at the high school, and said, man, it'd be really nice to have a camera here so I could see that, just that one time. And Greg said something to the effect of, well, I can move the camera, and then next week you're going to wish you had it over here. Like, you can only put so many cameras out.
Yes,
Where it becomes a manpower issue, it becomes a storage issue.
sure.
And again, you just don't get bang for your buck. So I want to reiterate that I'm confident in the quality of cameras we have, the expertise that we have around it. And there are times we're going to miss things, but that's in any situation where you're using cameras in the way that we are. So there's a little bit of caution in, again, sharing. We're proud of the number of views we have. That doesn't necessarily mean that 1,200 would be better than 800.
Yeah. Is it fiber optic an option that we have here at the school district? Is it not come down that far to the school? For internet?
It is. It's not based off the internet. It's based off our network.
Okay, okay,
So it's just regular Cat6 cable, networking cable that we
Okay.
have to the cameras,
okay,
and then that gets uploaded into our servers. So instantly.
okay.
So-
I just, because internet goes out all the time, and I just.
Yeah, no.
was-
No, there was talks of us trying to go into something like a cloud-based system and all stuff, but we also feared about internet loss and all
Yes,
that. It doesn't
yes.
happen. Luckily, the district is redundant on their internet, so if one does fail, we do have a backup. But in the case of something catastrophic,
Yeah.
that both of them go down, then we'll be dead in the water. So we
Yeah.
try to keep everything we can in-house.
Oh, good.
that
Well, you're the specialist.
Yeah.
We're just
Yeah.
asking a lot of
Yeah,
questions.
no,
We're
it's
just-
perfect. No, it's because if you guys have those questions, I'm pretty sure community members out there have those
Okay.
questions as well. So ask all the questions you guys want. So,
We have fiber between the buildings.
yeah, we have
We have
fiber.
the largest fiber network in town.
Okay, I didn't know, I mean, they said they always had it coming, but I didn't know what they really provided.
Yeah. With a lot of these views, with camera views, right, we do have vulnerabilities and constraints. You know, like the lens becomes damaged or blurry.
Yeah.
You know, Mother Nature is her own beast.
Yeah.
So there'll be times where water damage happens to the bulbs, is the reason why we're replacing, you know, bulbs throughout the district. Sun damage sometimes will cause blurriness. So those kind of things that we're also kind of battling. But again, that's why we try to track our cameras. We try to keep a stock of bubbles, camera bubbles to
Okay.
replace once we catch them. Some cameras have limitations on views, like Pete was talking about. You know, we do have some older cameras where we do miss, or we do move one of the lens and stuff to the left, but then all of a sudden it moves lens 2, 3, or 4 to the left as well. So now you just missed this back piece over here.
Yes.
We're slowly replacing those as budget allows.
Yes.
And so we're looking to hopefully continue that cycle of that replacement cycle. You know, then lighting becomes an issue. You know, there's an instance where we have a nice bright area, and then the camera view catches the shaded area as well,
Yeah.
but then the way the sun is coming in, you can't really see much in the shaded area. And so just because, just due to, like I said, just the position of the sun. So that becomes an issue as well. But, you know, like I said, at one point it's like that, but then when the sun moves, then pretty soon that
Sure.
becomes a beautiful shot on the view. So, and then again, it's data management. You know, we would love to keep more time frame. You know, because there's sometimes people do come, hey, 2 months ago this happened on your campus. Can we play video? I'm like, no. So, you know, it's just that kind of stuff. And then when we do come with these higher quality cameras and stuff that people, you know, that we have for our district and stuff, because like I said, newer technology, you know, the images, 4K cameras and all that stuff, takes up more data storage.
Yes.
So right now we're
True.
probably 12 and 14, but if we keep on getting those high quality resolutions, we might go down to, you know, 10 and 12.
Mhm.
You know, so
Okay.
unless we increase our storage.
Okay.
So that's just some of the vulnerabilities and constraints that we have. We are working diligently every single day to make sure that these are working. Because student safety is something we take very serious, especially in the IT department. With the amount of stuff that you've seen up here, IT touches all of it
Okay.
and stuff when we hand to hand and all that. So we try our best. You know, we have a good staff that I believe we're doing the right things to keep kids safe.
Good.
I think one of the limitations for the cameras, and would call this a constraint as a building administrator, my experience might be something like someone reported to me that Rigo Ozuna was bothering a kid in the hallway. And so I interviewed 3 students, and they tell me this is what occurred. And so I believe I know what happened. So I go ask Rigo, and Rigo says, I wasn't there. I don't know what you're talking about. I was never around that. I don't know why they're saying that. And then you might take the step as an administrator to go to the camera to confirm what the 3 students told you. There's Rigo talking to that student. Then I can go back to Rigo and say, you lied to me about that. You're probably lying to me about this. And it changes the conversation with the student, changes the conversation with the family. But in that whole experience for the student and for the administrator, the camera wasn't the lead tool. The lead tool was investigating and having the conversation. So it becomes, again, if we just relied on, hey, we want to have that evidence, it's not the gold standard.
Yeah.
It's a piece of the puzzle.
So if you want to go to the next slide, this is basically like the camera views that most building administrators see when they're trying to do an investigation or when they have cameras up in their on that TV set. This is kind of my view because, like I said, I watch cameras every now and then just to make sure that they're all working. But they typically have about 12 screens up at a time. When they're doing an investigation, this is probably their primary area, depending on where it's at, just to find the incident that happened. If you go to the next slide, they might break it down to 6 because that's the 6 areas that they're at, possibly. And if you go to the next slide, you can go all the way down to 1. So right here is how, if you notice at the very bottom, there's like little blue lines in the very bottom area. That's the motion sensing, motion detection that's happening and records that area. So right here, this camera footage is basically, I think it's from, what time is this? It's from like 8 to 10 a.m., 8:45 to 10 a.m. But at that whole, PM. And so, but that whole time, there was nothing really happening, so there's no sense in getting 2 hours of data if nothing happens, so we just really want the motion views. So they will they will review this, find the incident that happened, and then from there, they can get even smaller to extract a 2-minute video instead of having a 2-hour video.
Yeah.
Up there. So we try to do as much as we can to provide the right information to the right people.
That's a transition from our camera section, and again, I know it's been a topic of conversation for the board, so any specific questions about cameras or comments for the group, this might be a good time.
So I've heard complaints from parents about, not just in our public comment about things that happened at recess, at a particular school, but also from other elementary schools where there have been, kids are way out in the playground vaping. That let's say there's an accusation of kids out vaping in one of the schools. Do we have cameras that are on the playground? I mean, I saw this one that had 12 in it. I think there was one on the one playground shot.
Yeah, so
And is that where most of the violence happens with kids at school or bad
I have that
behavior?
right. Yeah, so there are certainly at every campus, there are components of the cameras that view our playground areas. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all of our cameras are physically attached to our schools, to our buildings. There might be a couple of odd areas in the athletic arena that maybe there are some cameras out there, but at our school sites, they're attached to the facility. So scanning away, the further away you get, just like with any camera, the less quality you have. At the playground level, the primary supervision is an active adult. We don't want two adults standing having a conversation at recess. There should be moving about, checking in on kids, seeing what's happening. So yes, we can see the playground, but again, we should understand that they're attached to the building, and the primary and the best view is around what's actually most proximate to the building.
That's all I had
We're done.
for cameras.
For a moment.
So we're good.
I do want to add, I guess, one piece of context as I've thought about the public comment, and you watch media and the news, and you see cops with they're required to wear body cams. Everybody has a phone with a million videos on it, and man, that's really good quality. How come you guys can't figure it out, right? People have just been trained that this is how the world works, and again, it's certainly part of what we do, and I'm really proud of these guys and how they do it. And so I understand the community pressure and the community interest in it, but I also want folks to give us, to acknowledge the really hard work that has happened and continues to happen. So I appreciate you guys sharing that so clearly.
There was one question about the quality of the camera, and I'm looking at these pictures here. That's pretty darn good quality
Yeah, I thought so
on that,
too.
really. You can see pretty clearly quite a ways.
This is kind of I don't know if you guys remember a couple of years ago, there was a shooting that that happened over there by the Scootney area, and the car came into our parking lot during the summertime or whatever. We were able to pull a partial license plate because of our cameras and stuff, and provide that to the police department. So that was something that we were proud of, because again, it just goes as far as my staff. They work really hard to make sure that everything's working. So very proud of my staff. Very proud of the school district, providing me the resources that we need to make sure the schools are safe.
So I just have one question. You have, depending on how high traffic the area is, you said 12 to 14 days, and that would be based on the oldest just kind of falls off when it like each camera has a specific amount that it saves, I'm assuming,
Correct,
right?
yes.
So you said there's no statute as far as how much we need to keep. My question more is, when we go to more high-res cameras that are gonna take more storage, are we gonna run into a problem where there is a limit that we're just way beyond right now, but there is no limit at all as far as how many days we would need to keep to increase our storage?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's something we're planning for. The more cameras that we replace, it's just the more terabytes we're going to have to purchase in the future. We do have a life cycle, like Pete was mentioning about, that when not to get too much into detail, but it's called the SAN, storage area network that we have. That's on a cycle as well. So when that is at its end of its life cycle, we'll get a bigger one, because we know cameras are having a higher quality, more data retention that we need. So, again, it's something that we have to really, really be mindful of to be fiscally responsible. moving forward. So.
I think another component of that question is at the administrator level, the building level, collecting some data from them and saying, hey, when you access cameras, typically how far back do you go? And if we hear from all of them that it was usually something that the kid reported that happened yesterday. Or sometimes they tell me on Monday and it happened Friday. So we've used 14 days as this window of time because it makes sense of what can capture and hold. But maybe the best practice is 7 days. So again, continual refinement and conversation with the administrators about that. But that's a good topic for us to be thoughtful about.
Quick question. I'm sorry, I said I was done, but does this also include, I know that we have video cameras on our buses. So is this all linked together or do they have their own network?
Yeah, no, the buses are a totally different system than
Okay.
what we have.
Okay.
They do have cameras that on their buildings that come to those type of cameras that we have, but the bus cameras are a totally different product, totally different stuff that we have. Yeah, they're video and audio. It's like I said, it's a totally different system, and we're actually in talks with the transportation director, Marion, on upgrading that system because there's newer stuff that's out there that's
Yep.
way better. There's cloud versions. There's stuff where you can just pull into the parking lot and it downloads the data off of a bus that we're looking at. Something that's going to help her out immensely.
Great.
Because right now they're all just like tape drives.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wow.
8-track tapes back in the day, they look just like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
She doesn't know what 8 tracks are. She's too young.
Yes, I do.
I know what 8-tracks are. How often do you get requests from the bus for video versus a request from a building video?
Well, my department, they're only involved when it comes to the buses when we have to blur students out. But anything that comes from a complaint, all that stuff, Marion will have who is the transportation director. She'll have better answer for you on that. But for me, we probably like right now, one of my staff members is doing blurring out videos right now for that. But this is part of the first time they've done it all year, I think, for the buses. Maybe the second. So.
Marion reviews all of
Yep, she
all the
reviews
bus stuff. Because it is physical. I have to take the hard drive out of the bus. And there's a reader in her office so that she can review it. It's not web-based like this. Sorry. Yeah, it's not web-based.
I think typical requests from the bus would be between the bus garage and the administrator. Kid comes to school and say, hey, this happened to me on the bus. Well, let me ask Marion. And so those are probably we do get from time to time requests from the community about those, but I think those are probably the most typical interactions.
Or the driver letting Marion know this happened on the bus and then reviewed.
Okay.
Okay, next slide. A little bit of trying to move forward or looking forward or to be prepared for the exercise you hope you never have to do. I'm going to start with active shooter training because that's what we kind of started. We did one last summer at the high school. It was very well received, very practical. Aaron Garza walked us through that and kind of just led us through some really good scenarios on it. It was very well received. We did a few smaller ones throughout the district as the year went on. Gang awareness had, with this last year, we kind of upped our game a little bit in that, and not only for the high school, in a lot of areas, it's not just, hey, that kid's a gang kid, because I think way back earlier, Pete mentioned the threat and the risk assessment. We're trying to do a lot of those, so trying to catch things early, so hence the 5th and 6th grade staff of, hey, this kid, maybe, you know, how kids are, they parrot and imitate, and maybe not even aware of consequences, or maybe that's just what, I've always done this. Well, that may lead to some things. So we want to be able to have that discussion and talk through it, and maybe the teacher wouldn't even recognize it. And so educating our educators on recognition, and then what do we do? Maybe as part of the DARE, maybe one of the SROs comes in and speaks and tries to talk with them. So educating the educators in that specific topic, they have a whole other curriculum they got to deal with. But when these doodles or these art things are coming through, or maybe this issue is arising, we want to catch it early and deal with it then. Maybe give some direction, some guidance to it rather than reacting to it. The trauma first aid is a training going to be done this summer. It's done previously. It's kind of the next step beyond first aid. Were we to have an incident where people were injured, we just purchased, Kat just purchased six new trauma kits for the high school, mainly about blood stoppage and tourniquets is really the addition to those first aid kits. How to use them. So bringing in OPD, cooperating with them to do the training on what do we do, how do you do a tourniquet? How do you put a chest pack in to slow down bleeding? Yeah, Marion.
So who all is receiving that piece of training? Is that just staff or their students as well?
That's currently staff. Yeah, currently staff. And it is kind of starting with the high school because we've got the trauma kits there, and then beyond, moving beyond that too. Yeah, there was a version of it done a while ago with OPD.
Yeah, 3 years ago, we have the kits that the high school has purchased is in addition to the kits that were existing, but we purchased 3 years ago, we implemented trauma first aid kits across the district. We put them in all the AED boxes. We trained all the nursing staff and gave them a kit as well, and then offered it up to any staff members who wanted it. And we had a trauma first aid kit training with that.
So I know that COVID kind of threw a wrench in all of the we do this, regularly, and we do this every so often. Is there some sort of training schedule that you're getting on the books to where we're going to do trauma first aid training X amount of time once a year or 2 times a year? We're going to do active shooter training this many times a year. Because I know we constantly have new paras coming in, new teachers coming in. It seems like, at every board meeting we have resignations and then new hires. And so that was one thing that we learned at our training was the number one thing you can do is to train your people. Doesn't matter how good your equipment is all the time if your people don't know what to do with it, don't know how to use it, and don't know what protocol is. So do you have in your plan some sort of training schedule?
We have some right here and then some on paper, yes. That regularly, and kind of start at the bottom, the first aid training is available and done regularly. It expires every 2 years, so there's a re-up and a renewing of that. Next step would be trauma first aid to add to that. Then we have the gang awareness piece. It had made its way through all of the grade schools and availability. Even a community forum was offered there as well. We've done a lot of it. I'm reticent to say yes, we have a plan and we're implementing it, but we're putting a lot of stuff on the schedule and kind of saying these are the needs. I'm hopeful about some new legislation coming that was just passed that allowed us to kind of pick the emergency exercises we were going to do. We're not doing a whole lot of earthquake drills anymore or nuclear drills anymore. But we have fires, and we have wildfires that come through here. We have wind, we have loss of power. What are we going to do with those? How are we going to get the kids out? How are we going, once we get the kids out, and what if it's after school, how are we going to get them back united with their parents? What about the transportation? What about the communication? All those type of things. Great segue into family reunification.
Before he moves on to the next one, pause. Training. We have a great electronic system in the district, and we have a spreadsheet with a 3-year plan that sets it up, and we have tabs. We have it set new hires, reoccurring teachers. We have a tab for every position. We have 3 sets. We set this up 4 years ago for our electronic training. I don't know if you've heard of it. I think it's called Safe Schools now. It's through the ESD, and that is a really good system, and it's really easy because we just assign it to a staff member, and they do it when they have time. It's a whole lot easier than setting up a training with OPD, fitting it into their schedule, making sure they have a trainer available. So Tim's working on this schedule. It's really hard to create for in-person trainings. If we could move it to the digital side of it, and do it on a computer, it's a lot easier, but you don't get the same training from it, right?
Right.
We've all sat in front of a computer, it's not the same. We learned in front of, from COVID, it doesn't. But it does provide something for us, so we do have trainings for, there's first aid, there's, bus driving. I mean, there's so many trainings available on that, but we don't want to overload our staff with that either. I think I do have to do 12 hours of training a year on the computer.
Yeah.
It's,
I just know that I would say the number one complaint that staff has said to me personally is, if we had an active shooter on campus, I don't know what the plan is. And one thing that we talked about in our training was, you can have all the policies you want, but if people don't know how to put that into procedure, it's just a piece of paper.
and that, like that specific incidents, we default to run, hide, fight, right? And that's not a training you can do on the computer and assign somebody. It has to be in person, because it has to make that connection with them, so that when that event hits, they know what to do and they don't
Right.
go code black,
Right.
right? So that's really important that we do that in person and we help that people make the connection.
When you do your first aid trauma, is that something that you require all staff has to be at? I'm assuming that's an in-person.
It's an in-person done by OPD. It's gonna be optional, because there's scheduling pieces that come along with it. What are we required to get this person there? How many people can do it at a time? And how frequently can we do it, and add it to PLCs or time off as well?
Okay.
First aid is required, and so that's one step of it. The next step, the trauma, love to have it everyone required, haven't got there yet. Yeah.
I do want to add I guess my own personal perspective and opinion on trauma first aid in particular. Certainly requiring our employees to have basic first aid skills. That makes sense. What do you do if your coworker falls over? What do you do in this situation to help a student? I think the distinction for me between trauma first aid and really typical first aid is, I tie it to what you just said a moment ago, Sharon, about she doesn't know what 8-track is, right? When I was teaching, we didn't talk about these issues. And so I sit here and I look at Gael and I look at Sebastian, and I wonder what they're thinking as we're talking about training students and staff to provide trauma first aid in our schools. And I wonder how kids feel when they sit in classrooms and have to think about that because of the incidents that occur so frequently. To ask a teacher, I guess we just need to be thoughtful about requiring a teacher to get a level of training that is beyond traditional first aid, or to ask students to do that. We got to be thoughtful about our intent. Certainly the more people that have these skills, yeah. But to put someone in that situation or that kind of training that mentally hasn't accepted that responsibility, I signed up to teach, and I'm going to protect my kids. I'm going to run, hide, fight. We all have a limit and a line. We all do, and I think we have to be careful about how our teachers might react to that and some of our other staff, and again, our students. I know there are some school districts doing that, but to me, that's a broader conversation, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Can I just ask one question where you call it just like the regular first aid that expires every 2 years? Does that also include the CPR and AED component to it? Thank you.
And just to address, in a tragedy, in an emergency, it's always spontaneous. So even in our regular scheduled drills that we do every month, adding a level of spontaneity, of independent thinking, to me, adds for that preparation. Because I would never have to tell my wife to protect her child.
Right.
She's gonna do that, and she's gonna figure out a way to do it, and God help the person who's trying to hurt them.
Right.
I think as a person, their first reaction may be, I don't know what to do, but I'm sure you could preserve.
Yeah.
Preservation. I was mixing that word up there. You could figure out how to do that, and you'd probably have that same mindset for your students. You'd figure out how to get a way to either hide or fight or run. And so I think that getting them to think through what they mean. You may not know what to do, but instinctually, you're going to try to be safe.
Yeah.
And so take that and apply it to your students and figure it out. We'll keep you informed, and we'll when we're doing our drills, we're gonna add some spontaneity. It's not gonna be on Thursday, we're gonna do a fire drill, so
Yeah.
here's an emergency. No, it's, what's that bell? Listen to what's happening. We have an all call, and this is what it's saying. We're gonna use these 3 words. This is what you do. But we're also gonna trust that you can independently think,
Yeah.
because you're an adult and these are kids and you're gonna take care of them. And, you know, I push back a little bit and say, why wouldn't, we've not informed you? I think you're an adult, you can figure that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of challenge the thinking of that you don't know what to do, but you do know how to protect yourself. So
Yeah.
I think we are the kind of people that would protect our kids and themselves and work together. We've seen them, you know what I mean?
I think it was more around like who does the announcement? How does the word get out? And I think Hiawatha was a good example of showing that like any teacher
could
can
work.
do it, and just empowering teachers to know that like it doesn't have to come from the principal, that one teacher can see an emergency and make the call. But just knowing like, how do our intercoms work? How do our phone systems work?
Yeah.
Can these phones communicate with everyone's phone? Like how, just making sure that people know what our things are capable of.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes they're like, our phones don't have that capability, when actually they do.
Yeah.
So,
And I've tried to use different forms to educate that piece, even in going to there's a monthly secretaries meeting, coming to the secretary meeting. Do you realize your phones can do this? No, because I had the same, no, they don't. Actually, they do. But we don't want to post that next to the phones, because there's a lot of kids that come into your office.
Yeah.
You probably don't want to give them that code. But how to be aware of that. And then we have a lot of change in leadership,
Yeah.
too. Re-educating them, new people coming in, new staff hires. Yes, we have a system for that. So
yeah,
absolutely, and I would rather you bring that up and we talk about it than you hear it and like, oh, I guess we're just gonna deal with it.
Yeah.
No, we wanna talk about it.
yeah,
And
for
then
sure.
talking about it, we can process it.
Agreed.
Is that you, Smart Pass?
Yep. So we're going to finish up around this new tool that we're purchasing for Othello High School. It's called Smart Pass. And so Gael might appreciate this. There are probably times at the high school where you just walk up and say, hey, I need to use the restroom, and the teacher might sign out. Some might not make you sign out, but you're kind of in the hallway, right? Kind of your own devices. This system will allow us to track that all electronically. So we'll know how many people are in the hall, who's in the hall. We'll be able to capture data about the number of times particular students might be. There are times where teachers have concerns about students abusing those privileges. This will allow us to actually track that data, keep good accounting of it, and decide, hey, are our process and systems working? It's also around this idea about family reunification and safety when we have drills and knowing where everyone's at. This will help with that. I think it was last week they had an on-site experience with a trainer around it, and really good reviews from our administrators. So we're moving forward with Smart Pass at Othello High School next year. That, again, is a reminder of all the layers that are involved in this. Certainly this took, we want to give it the time that it requires. I want you to hear from me that I appreciate the board reminding us, hey, you guys said these things? Let's see it, let's hear about it. And so giving us the opportunity to provide that, I think it's important to thank the community and the teachers who have called for an update and letting them know, and us communicating clearly about what is happening across the system. So we, again, apologize for the length of it, but it's certainly an important topic and top of mind for a lot of people, and would welcome any additional questions for the team before we dismiss them.
I thank you, and I think it kind of it's good. It takes away from people asking if they're listening, they're seeing the same thing, hearing the same thing that we're hearing. It kind of gives a nice feeling of relief.
Yeah. And when people ask for updates now, I feel like
Yeah.
now we're, we're armed with the information of what's coming, what's being done now, like what our plan is and what we have. Just like, sometimes some people don't know how to use the phones. I don't know all the things that we currently have in use that are working and that are doing great things. And so it's good to have a refresher like this. And I'm the type of person where something is very easy, out of sight, out of mind for me. So when nothing bad has happened, I stopped thinking about safety, and then it takes something bad happening, and then people are calling me, and I'm like, yeah, what, you know, it makes people feel up in arms. Like, there's another school shooting. What are we doing to protect our kids? And I know that that's a small percentage of like problems that happen at schools is a school shooting, but it triggers people. And it's something that every parent in our district worries about. And because we're not above it, I would love to believe that it would never happen in this community. But I think every community who's had that happen has felt that way. And so I want us to have this, to be prepared that we're thinking about it, and I want myself to be thinking about it and not forget just because I get complacent. So I appreciate all of the hard work, and we as a board have, I don't want to say hounded Pete, but we have, I would say this is probably the biggest topic that we have gone to him about over and over and over again. So I appreciate the ginormous report and the time that you guys put in, because as a board, we have been relentless. So sorry about that, Superintendent Press. So if he's hounding you, it's because we have been hounding him, because the community has come to us over and over and over again. So it's important. It's all of our kids. People, myself included, we send our children to school every day and entrust their lives to our superintendent, to you, to the, you know, their teachers, their secretaries, entrusting that they will be safe and protected at our schools. And so the relentless badgering is only because it's right.
Yes.
So thank you guys for your work. Appreciate it.
And I'm really happy with going to locked doors. That was something that was really emphasized at our last conference, was locked doors. I know we'll probably get some feedback from a few people why we are doing that, but it is so much easier to explain why than why we didn't if the situation did happen. So I'm really appreciative of the report tonight. It just helps us and helps explain it all to the public too, that it is constantly being worked on.
Thanks.
Okay, now we'll go on to D, preschool report.
Yeah, we're excited to have Jennifer Garza here this evening. Looks like Paula's in the house as well. I don't know if Paula's joining. She's just here for support. But again, an important topic that we just covered, and important that we give it the time that it requires. But also, our core business is making sure kids have positive learning experiences. And so it's nice to transition to that and catch our breath a little bit. And excited to hear from Jennifer tonight about the excellent work that's happening at our preschool and our TK program here in the district. So we'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Well, thank you for this opportunity, and I'm glad that you got to come visit our main site a couple weeks ago. I also think it's pretty exciting that it's not just the Husky Pup picture up there, but we have Hiawatha and Scoopy, because that is where two of our TK classes. Sorry. Anyway, that's where two of our TK classes are, and we would love to have TK at all four of our elementaries, but just because we have no more classrooms, so that's kind of what limits us there. But it is exciting to have our little ones at different locations now. Tonight's presentation is kind of just to give you a little bit of background about the preschool. I get the question a lot, like, how do you guys decide what to teach? What curriculum are you using? Does preschool even have standards? Yes, very much so. NIAC is a national conference that Paula and I went to a few years ago in Nashville, and then we went again this year, and we took our three TK teachers to Washington, D.C. to their big conference. And they are a major resource that we use when we're doing research or we're trying to decide best practices. Those are like the gurus of early childhood education. So I just put this definition here because early childhood education, when people say that word, they often think preschool, daycares. And it does include that, but it actually goes all the way through age 8. So that's actually our kindergartners, our first graders, and our second graders. This is just a slide kind of giving you a little bit of background history. I just knew we had new school board members also. Just wanted to show you how the program has grown over the years. We've moved a couple different times. We're fortunate now to have our own location, and we're super happy about that. And then just how we've grown from when we used to have one classroom, and now we have classrooms at, like I said, multiple locations. And we used to have about 75 students way back when, 2016. And I think the most we've had is 215, and this year we're about 186. This is a plan that a proposal I went to Pete a couple of years ago to how do we roll out early learning in the district, so it's not just preschool, so that it is making an impact in all the way through age 8. So the first year, it really was about making some changes in preschool and not just doing all academics, but really looking at the whole child. And then how do we roll that into our kindergarten teachers? So we did some pretty extensive training during the summer with them a few summers ago. And then Paula and I spent time mostly Paula was with the kindergarten teachers, training them, working with them, helping them look at their instruction to make it more developmentally appropriate for kindergarten. This year has been working with, last year and this year has been working with first grade teachers, and then next year the hope is to work with more of our second grade teachers. And so we've offered summer PD to them, and then like I said, also Paula going in throughout the year, working on either specific lessons or specific units to make that more developmentally appropriate.
Jen, could I just add a piece of context for the board around the strategic planning process? We would certainly expect that our early learning work and what's been happening for the last several years would be part of that process. So you can imagine that the sessions that we're going to set up that Dr. Campbell described might be a group of folks, not only from the preschool, but from our elementary schools and maybe our middle and high schools, coming together to say, what experiences do our kids need in early learning, so that it becomes a significant and core component of what we do as a district. So this work won't go away, but it will be folded into the broader strategic plan.
So one thing at the preschool that we're always just trying to define is what is readiness. We say they're going to be ready for kindergarten, or they're going to be ready for first grade, they're going to be ready for second grade. So what is readiness? And so, kind of like I mentioned, just looking at the whole child, the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s are obviously are vital, but also just looking at the whole child, making sure that we have those foundational skills. So we often refer to some of those things as soft skills, and that's going to be, do they know how to share? Do they know how to take turns? Do they know how to problem solve? Do they know how to use the bathroom on their own? Can they tie their shoes? The fine and gross motors, can they hold a pencil? Can they skip? Can they gallop? Can they climb stairs? And then obviously the academic skills, but just trying to make sure that we're looking at all of those areas, not just how many letters do they know, how many sounds do they know. That's when parents register for kindergarten, that's always what they want to know, is how many letters do they know, how many shapes do they know. And so we're really just trying to make sure that we're looking at all those pieces to support them. And then making sure that they're ready for kindergarten, but then moving beyond kindergarten. And then is kindergarten ready for the kindergartners that are coming in, because maybe they are different than what they've experienced in the past. Is first grade ready for these incoming kindergartners, and then so on. One piece that we've done also is just trying to make sure that we are grounded in our research also. So like I said, we went to the NIAC conference the last couple of years. This year we actually just last week sent a group clear to North Carolina that went to an inclusion conference to learn more about including all kids in the classroom. I've sent some of our paras and teachers to the ESD in Pasco for training. We went over to the west side to Edwin Pratt Preschool this year to view they have a whole huge early learning center to see what type of best practices they're doing. So really not just saying, oh, Paula said, or Jennifer said, or I pulled this idea off of Teachers Pay Teachers, but that we're really doing the research and it's grounded in that. This is just an example of readiness, how like every child that comes to us is a little bit different. You're going to have the student that maybe actually they're already reading and they do already know all their letters and sounds, but there may be a very shy child. And we see this every year when they come to preschool. I've often often been asked, that kid scored, you know, we have a test that's worth 100 points, and that kid already got a 90 in September, so why did you let them into preschool? Well, because that was just the academic side of it, but they're a very, very shy child and don't know how to interact with other kids and don't know some of those social skills. So they need preschool just as much for that as they do the academic piece. There's the little, you know, the one that maybe is super wiggly and squirmy, and so how are we helping them get ready for preschool? So this is just this comes from the NIAC website about what does readiness look like. It looks different for every kid, but how do we help them all be prepared for that next step? So the standards that we use for preschool, I think most of you know that in kindergarten, they have to take the Walk Kids assessment. That's kind of like the SBA for kindergartners. And they take it, it can be done over the first, I think, 12 weeks, 10 weeks of school. So it's not like day one, they come in and they have to take the assessment, but it's something that's done over several weeks. And in the Walk Kids, there are 6 domains that they're being assessed on, again, to like assess the whole child. So the social, emotional, there's some standards that they have to meet, physical, cognitive, language, literacy, and math. So we took those standards because it's on a continuum, and we look at where are they supposed to be as a 4-year-old, and we redone our assessment so that it aligns to those standards. We've reworked some of our curriculum and our instruction so it aligns to those standards. So those are the standards that we use because it's the same as what they're using in kindergarten. And it's actually a continuum that goes through all of early childhood, so technically it goes through the end of 2nd grade, but we just use it in preschool and then kindergarten.
So you guys give the Walk Kids assessment or something similar at the end before preschool graduation, and then they do it again. No, I mean, you know, and then again in kindergarten within the first 10 weeks of school.
So our TK classes, they have to do the full-blown Walk Kids assessment.
Okay.
And that's actually reported to the state. The rest of our classrooms, they do, like we took that assessment and kind of created our own. And so we give that to them in October is the first thing that we give it to them. And then January, March, and May. So we can see like the growth, but it's very similar to the Walk Kids assessment. It's just we kind of made it our own a little bit.
And then they take it again.
And then
So they'll
take
take it.
the full-blown Walk Kids again in the
Like-
fall of their kindergarten year.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, our kindergarten gives it 3 times a year also. So the state only requires it 1 time, but we give it fall, winter, and spring. And that's what the kindergarten actually uses for their report card. Because again, it's not just the academic piece that covers all those areas.
Right. Okay.
So the Walk Kids standards, they're fluid. It's on a continuum, so you can kind of see, like, if this is where they're at, they're about a 5-year-old, and this is what I need to do to get them to the next step. Or they're here, and this is what they're lacking, so I need to go back and fill these holes. No one standard is greater than the other, so we're not saying that knowing 26 letters and sound is any more important than being able to share and take turns. In 2018 is actually when we started looking at the Walk Kids standards more closely, and we had teachers and my paras. They looked at they looked at every standard, every like the breakdown of those, and what they were currently doing in their classroom, and then the following year what we needed to do better. And so we're actually going to be doing that again this coming school year in the August when we come back to school. That some of our PD is re-look at those standards, the domains, and what are we currently doing, and do we still have some holes that we need to make sure that we're filling. This is kind of just to show you an example of a continuum. So this one just happened to be, I just flipped one on traveling skills. And so the numbers at the top have nothing to do with age. That is just how they made the continuum. So for kindergarten, we actually look at the purple. So kindergarten teachers are looking at that purple bar, and they would say, yep, my kids are able to do this. And if not, then they go back and they look at the blue bar. So blue is actually 4-year-olds. So sometimes you can see it overlaps with the purple. And then sometimes you'll see the purple bleed into the pink, which is going to be 1st grade. But every one of the domains has its objectives, and then every objective has its own continuum. And so that's what our teachers will be doing this fall, is looking at each one of these continuums and seeing, are we hitting all of these in our lessons? This is just a little bit about the assessment. Like I mentioned, TK has to give it the 1 time a year, but then we give it 3 times a year to align with kindergarten. They also do the preschool assessment, which I said, like I said, is very aligned to the Watkins assessment. We don't give the first one until October. That way kids get used to coming to school, get to know their teacher, are feeling comfortable. And that's actually, even as a state, doesn't require it till the end of October also. Actually, this next year, it won't be required to be finished until November 12th, because I think that's just the importance of building those relationships with kids, having them get used to school, making friends, all those pieces.
Can I just
Well-
ask a quick, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No,
A
you
quick
go ahead.
question about this purple bar, right, is the kinder bar,
Yes.
right? So is that where they want that child to be doing everything on number 8 when they start kindergarten?
No, by the end of kindergarten.
By the end,
Uh-huh.
okay.
So that's
So
why
when
they-
they
some of
get
them
there,
might
they
start
may
getting
be
into that.
more into the blue
Yeah.
and the green at the beginning, and you're trying to get them to accomplish all of those things by the end of that year.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
And that's not like an exhaustive checklist. The bullets under there are kind of just to help give teachers and administrators an idea of this is what they should be doing, this is what it should look like. But, I mean, it's not an endless list, because then it could be super long, but just helps give us an idea, gives us ideas for what type of activities and lessons that we should be creating around those. I referred to soft skills, and so that used to be on the actual assessment that we have, but that is a little bit more subjective and something maybe that's ongoing, a lot more like teacher observation. So this year we took it off of like the hard copy assessment, and we've been trying to find different ways for teachers to collect that data on different like checklists or like annotatable notes. But still, every time we have data meetings, we go to their soft skills and we check with them, how are you tracking that? How do you know how they're doing? Where's your notes? What kids still need to work on those skills? And so then it is still a part of our data meetings, it's just not on the 100-point test, I guess I'll say. So I was just gonna go through each of the areas. One thing I hope you notice as I go through each of the areas and some of the things that we're doing at the preschool and in our TK classes to hit the standards, is that almost any one of the pictures you see could actually be on any of the 6 domains. We really try to make sure all of our lessons are hands-on, they're developmentally appropriate. We have visuals for them, it's auditory, there's movement, and maybe the picture is on here is on for social emotional, but it probably happened during a reading activity. There might have been during their science lesson, like it's all really interwoven. You can ask Paula how long I spent trying to pick pictures to like fit each area, because really they can go in all the areas. So this is the standard, this is the different objectives we have for social emotional. So you'll see some of the things I was talking about in our soft skills. Can they manage their feelings? Can they follow rules and limitations? Can they take care of their own needs? Can they come in, put away their backpack, take off their coat, use the bathroom, get out, whatever materials they need? How do they interact with peers? Can they take turns? Can they share? Can they problem solve? So these are some of the things we're doing at the preschool to help them learn their social emotional skills. So one is that we spend the first week really working on building those relationships, learning routines. How do you walk in a line? How do you transition between table groups? How do you sit on the carpet? All those routines that some of them have no idea that there's actually parameters and rules to things. We offer different seating options, so when they're sitting on the carpet, we don't make everybody sit crisscross applesauce like probably most of you had to do when you were in kindergarten. We have what's called the French fry, the mermaid, or crisscross, so they have a choice. So you have to sit on the carpet, that's the rule, that's the requirement, but you have a choice of how you're gonna sit on the carpet. We also have all different kinds of chairs now. You can see the 2 little girls there in the bottom picture are sitting in what we call cube chairs. So we have different options for them. They can even stand if they don't want to sit in a chair. But they have to be in whatever area they're supposed to be. They can just have some choice in that. We try to build movement into all of our activities. We have breathing exercises we call star breathing to help kids learn to calm down and to regulate their emotions. We have different calming devices, calming corners. We try to give kids breaks that need those breaks. And then this year we've been fortunate that the elementary counselors have helped us out a few times when we've had some special circumstances and kids needed that additional support. This next year we're working on making sure that we have calming corners in all of our classrooms. We went to a training this year that was about too much stimuli on the walls. So really looking at our classrooms and evaluating, the trainer there said you should only have things on the walls that they're actually going to be using. You don't need all the cutesy and fluffy stuff. If they're not using it, take it down, because for a lot of kids it's too overstimulating. And then actually this morning that is about when, same thing, learning self-regulation. So when I'm getting mad, or I'm sad, or I'm frustrated, instead of hitting and kicking and screaming and those type of things, how does the child learn to calm themselves down? How does they learn to take a step back, take those deep breaths, and find a different solution besides hitting? So I don't know if you noticed, but also, kids have to learn personal space. So you can see the little boy in the box in the top corner. And the other little boy is not wanting him to be hug on him. But, so that's a part of preschool, is learning, personal space and reading other people's emotions, that I don't like this. This is just some fun pictures. Again, they have to learn to share. They have to learn to take turns. They have to learn to cooperate. The little boy in the bottom, like, he's one of our students with special needs, and he needed a break, and it didn't matter that it was right there in the middle of the sidewalk, but we respect that. We give him his space, and we let him have the break that he needs. That bottom picture is actually our custodian, who is, the kids love when he goes into their classroom, and that was his buddy. When that student needed some extra support, the teacher would call Mark to come and pay some extra attention to him. The next one is physical. So again, our balancing skills, our traveling skills, being able to hold a pencil correctly, cutting with scissors, tying our shoes. So again, here just talking about the seating options, movement. I can't tell you, every training I've been to the last couple of years talks about giving kids the opportunity to move, letting them stand up, taking those breathing breaks. A lot of teachers call them brain breaks, or doing what's called just noodle, but making sure that we're moving. Crossing the midline is super important. A couple years ago, Paula actually worked with the second grade team, I think it was at Hiawatha or for Scootney, one of them, about their kids had just come out of COVID, and they were really struggling with being able to write and even being able to have the endurance to do that. And so she worked with them on every day for 10, 15 minutes. Here's some activities they could engage in to help build their fine motor skills. And one of the ones early on is, can a kid take their right hand and pick up something on their left side? And you'd be surprised sometimes how many kids can't do that. But that's one of the very first early on skills that kids have to learn, is being able to cross over the opposite side of your body. So we do lots of activities to work on crossing that midline and then building their core. So tummy time is like maybe sitting in a big old circle, laying on your tummies and playing bingo, or doing some type of activity but where you're on your stomach and have to prop yourself up on your elbows. Obviously recess, one thing about preschool, which I also wish elementaries would do more of, is that you can't take away recess from a kid. It's really important, because the kid that you probably just took recess away from is probably the kid that needed it the most. So they need to go outside, they need to get that fresh air, and they need to move. Sometimes, some of our classrooms, even in the morning, if their kids are just really squirrely or just off, they take them outside for recess, even for 10 minutes, just to get that fresh air, especially if some of our kids sit on a bus for over an hour. So you sat for an hour, and then you want me to come into the classroom and sit down on the carpet. And then we have vertical learning spaces, so where something's on the wall and they have to do the painting or the stickers or the writing on the wall, helps build their the skills that they'll need to be able to hold a pencil. So again, here's just some activities where we're really working on those physical skills, those fine motor skills, to help them. Those fine motor skills are what's going to lead to being able to hold a pencil in third grade and write an essay, or even type an essay. Cognitive skills are going to be in everything and anything we do all day long, basically. So again, like I said, we do have our data meetings. So every time we give an assessment, then we have a data meeting. We're looking at where kids are at. Are they making progress? Which kids aren't making progress? Are we concerned there's other needs? And then what type of intervention? So just like many of I think all the schools, but so we have this class. These are the 5 kids. This is where some of their holes are, and this is what we're going to do to address those holes. We're very fortunate that we have middle school kids and high school kids that come in, or just young adults that come in. And so sometimes they're really helpful, because either they can do some one-on-one things or small group things with the kids, or the teacher can, and while the helpers are engaging in other fun activities with the kids. Again, the Walk Kids Continuum, just looking at, okay, if this is where they're still struggling, let's back up and see what did they miss, and what activities can we put in place to fill that. Obviously having high expectations. This year, one thing that we've done is really worked on, instead of, okay, this kid knows all 26 letters and 26 sounds, but let's dig deeper and make sure that they really have those solid before we start teaching them to read. or maybe they know all their numbers to 20 or maybe even 100, but let's really make sure they understand what those numbers mean and how those numbers are working before we're going to start teaching them addition. So really just making sure that we're going nice and deep and they're really solid before we try to move on. That's been a hard concept for some of our staff because they're like, well, they can already do this. But there's lots of things you can do to kind of assess to see, do they actually really know it at a deep level. So again, just everything they do is going to be cognitive and trying to problem solve, that higher order thinking, figure things out. This year, another thing we got was discrimination? Visual discrimination, sorry. I was like, that doesn't sound right. But boxes where the little guy in the top row, he's super happy, he's holding the paper and he had to make the object in front of him. And then the little girl at the end, she has pom-poms and she's having to follow a pattern. That's all with your vision. Can you see the picture and follow the flat 2D model and make a 3D model of it? So we got Paula made 7 of those kits for all of our classrooms this year. Language skills, so especially in preschool, kindergarten, first grade, that's where they're developing all that language. Especially we have many of our students that are learning 2 languages and sometimes 3 languages. And so the more opportunities we can give them to talk. So we have what serve and return, so asking kids questions where it's requiring them to give you an answer, or if they're wanting something, requiring them to ask. And so that serve and return, that back and forth conversation, not just one-way conversation. Giving them opportunity to talk. We have snack talk, so at snack time or lunchtime, breakfast time, they will have a paper on the table that has, so like it was vehicles, so it'll be all different kinds of vehicles, and it's just a way to then probe them, like, oh, what kind of vehicle do you have at home? Or what kind of vehicle would you like to drive? Anyway, so while they're sitting and eating lunch, instead of just sitting and eating lunch, they're having these back and forth conversations. And so Paula, again, made a whole bunch of different topics, birthdays, babies, toys, superheroes, all these things that they can rotate through to have talks at snack time. Our curriculum is around rhyming boxes and story cards. And so in those, so the rhyming boxes might be around, what is one of our, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And so all the math activities, reading activities, all the activities in there are going to be around that particular story, but still hitting all the standards. The same thing with the story cards. So like do Goldilocks and the 3 little bears, or the 3 bears, and everything on the cart. There will be fine motor work, gross motor work, literacy, math, all tied into around one theme of a story. This past summer we went to GLAD training and got trained on some of the strategies, and again, that's just building language, giving kids those opportunities to talk, using lots of visuals, pictures, realia. We've done several different, this picture is actually one of our teachers doing a science project. She's done several with her kids this year. Actually, right now they're growing mold on bread, so doing lots of those type of activities. And then obviously during purposeful play is a huge time where kids are talking to each other. And so it's really cool to see those kids that come in pretty much mute, won't say a whole lot, and then purposeful play is that time because they're with their peers that you start to see them kind of come out of their shells and talking to one to another. And those ones that were a little bit more bossy at the beginning, learning to let other people have some airtime. So again, this is just a variety of activities. I could have put hundreds of pictures here where kids are just developing that language. The one in the middle is our sandbox got full of water and leaves and froze, and so that was quite the topic of discussion at recess for a few days. You guys saw the glue table they made. Anyway, just lots of opportunities to build that language. Literacy skills, that's gonna be your ABCs and learning to read and the sounds. In our kindergarten classrooms, they use a program called Haggerty, and it was only through kindergarten, but they recently made it, now they make a preschool version of it, so we got that. JC, our TK teacher last year, piloted it for us, and then this year we got it for all of our classrooms, and it was pretty interesting because we had just got them, and we're gonna be starting the lessons, and some of the staff at Ludacaga contacted me and wanted to meet with me about some of the holes they were seeing in the kids that went through OSD preschool. And they were really strong in these areas, but they still had these certain holes, and they were really surprised they had those holes. And I said, okay, well, yeah, let's meet and talk about it. So we looked at their data, and actually the holes they have will be filled by doing the Haggerty lessons, and they were beyond overjoyed that we were going to be doing Haggerty, so because it's filling some of those phonemic awareness holes. Like one example is they do a ton of rhyming. Every day they're doing rhyming. They're counting syllables. They're breaking apart words. They're putting words together. So it's been really great, and our teachers have done a phenomenal job with it. We have open-ended writing centers, so writing centers, tons and tons of supplies are there, every type of writing tool, paper, envelopes, stamps, all kinds of stuff where they're practicing writing. Again, our rhyming boxes and our story cards are working on those literacy skills. And we actually focus on what the students in the class, what is the first letter of their name, that's the first letters they start learning throughout the year. We don't say like, this week we're learning A all week, and now we're doing B, and now we're doing C. We would take all the letters of your first name, and those are the ones that they start learning from day one of school to start learning their letters, because it gives them that like connection to something. Oh, I know P is for Pete. Oh, okay, so it gives them that real connection. Here's just some different literacy activities they've been engaged in this year. You can see the bottom picture. She's buttering a piece of cornbread because in the story card they read The Little Red Hen, and then they make bread, the teacher, we either buy bread or this teacher made cornbread, and then the kids make butter in little baby food jars. So not only getting the literacy experience, but then making that real life connection to it, and still working on fine motor skills. Math is going to be anything to do with numbers, shapes, colors. And again, some of the things that we try to make everything as hands-on as possible. Fiveness was something that Janice Heigl taught us several years ago when she came to work in the district, really making sure that kids have fiveness. And if they don't, then you don't go on to 10 until they really understand 5. This was the picture at the bottom was actually one of our paras was long-term subbing for the teacher in the classroom, and she made this. It's on like the wall, and then it was a magnetic board, and those are magnet tiles. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're pretty cool. And the kids thought that was a great activity. And then this next year, working on we've done some random STEAM activities throughout the year, but just like we have our story cards and our rhyming boxes, making actual STEAM kits. Paula made some this year for the first grade teachers at Wajitas that have been really, really successful, and so making those also for our preschool classrooms. Again, here you can see just all kinds of counting and less than, greater than, equal to, patterns, shape. The bottom corner, they're doing shapes with food. So that was kind of a fun activity where they actually got to eat the food after they were able to sort it by shapes. And again, just a reminder of like our overall goal that this goes through. This is where we want them to get by the time they're going to enter into 3rd grade. And so just trying to make sure that not only I'm at the preschool, and that is a big piece of my job, but also are we supporting kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade, and are we getting those teachers on board with what does developmentally appropriate look like in a 1st grade and 2nd grade classroom. So I talked really fast because I know it's been a long night, but any questions about any of the slides there?
It was very thorough. Could you demonstrate a French fry sit?
Your legs are out in front of you.
Okay. I thought you meant curly fries. I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah. And a mermaid is like you're sitting on your hips and your legs to the side. And then, what was the other one? A crisscross.
Yes, you know that one.
The mermaid one really had me thinking deep. Like, how do you sit like a mermaid?
Yeah, so if your legs are stuck together, but you have them out to the...
Yeah.
That's cute.
Because sometimes kids can't, they don't have the core strength yet to sit crisscross. And so we learned at a couple different trainings we've been to now, when you're forcing them to sit crisscross and they don't have that core strength, then that's all their mind can think about is, oh, my teacher wants me to sit crisscross, I have to sit crisscross. And so they're focusing so hard on that they're not paying any attention to what you're teaching up front. So if you just give kids some flexibility to be able to sit either the way they're comfortable or the way their body can do it without thinking, then they can pay attention to what you're doing at the up the board or at the front of the class. So that was kind of a huge thing. I used to make kids sit crisscross when I taught kindergarten, but I didn't think about how much brain power it's taking if they don't have that core strength. So that's also why we do a lot of things to build that core strength is, they need that to be able to do a lot of things.
When we were there, when we were touring one classroom for a few minutes, she was doing that rhyming and the words apart and the words together with her class. And it was pretty incredible to watch how engaged the kids were with that whole piece. So I think that's great that that's something that's going to come to the whole school there.
I think we've seen so much differential from the first year going to the year 4.
Yeah.
We've seen so much, and it's opened our eyes, and certainly a lot of work that you guys have put into it. And we like to watch the little kids, don't we? We love watching the kids.
Yeah, the rhyming, even I mean, Paula's done so much with the STEAM at that age. When they had the popsicle sticks, and there was they saw like a 3D picture, just like you had in the pictures, and this little girl was building it. I was just blown away. Like it seemed so difficult for someone her age. I mean, I would have thought that was something you would do in like second grade, but she knew she was stacking it just how it was supposed to go. I was blown away. So let's say out of 100 students, how many kids, I know it's hard to quantify like what's ready for kinder, but like out of 100, how many kids are ready for kinder as far as your assessment goes?
So when I first started, the assessment has always been worth 100 points. And if students got 30 points, like kindergarten teachers were super happy. They were like, yay, they're at least coming with something. Then after a few years, I mean, yeah, you're always raising the bar, raising the expectation. So then we said if they got 50 points, like, okay, that's a little bit more solid, a little bit more solid foundation. So if they get to 50. So we do still say 50 points, at least, so at least half. And so right now we have, when we tested in March, we had 77% of our kids ready. And then so we're actually testing again next week. And so our goal is obviously to have 100% of them ready. From year to year, when it was only 30, I mean, yeah, we would have 100%. And even when we raise the bar to 50 points, we usually get around 97, 98% of.
Wow.
So almost, we get a lot of them there. And now we even do look at how many of them do we get to 70 points or higher.
Yeah.
Same thing, we get probably close to 60 or higher percent of kids even scoring 70 points or higher.
Wow.
So our kids
That's
still
fantastic.
sometimes struggle. It just, I mean, it kind of depends on, some of our students maybe with special needs. Sometimes when they are learning 3 languages, that's a difficult.
Oh yeah.
Learning 3 languages. And sometimes just lack of exposure. They don't really have a lot of exposure outside of the preschool opportunity. But yeah, we get quite a few ready for kinder.
That's fantastic. I love coming to the campus because the kids are so great and all of your staff is just the best. Paula's so great. You're such a great principal, and everyone who works there seems like they really love their job.
They love the
And that's
kids,
a-
is what we
and
noticed.
they love the kids.
Those,
That's such a nice
Yes.
thing to see, where it's like everyone who's there loves their job. They're not just there like, oh yeah, I'm coming to
Yeah,
work
no,
today.
they
It's
really
like,
do.
no, I love these kids and I love my job. So yeah.
We are super blessed because I would agree 100%. They're their own family. They
Yeah.
really take care of and watch out for each other, and they do love their jobs. And
Yes.
even Mark, our custodian, like a couple times now, he's had opportunities to like change to different schools or different positions, and I'm like, don't be leaving me. I want to do that, but I want to stay here. I want that shift, but I want to stay here. Anyway, yeah, the kids love having Mark there too.
Yes.
He's a great role model for them.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It was
Yes.
a great visit.
It
Really
was.
great visit.
Thank you.
I love the attention and detail that you put into each individual student. It's just not a group of students, it's individual students. And that's what's going to impact those kids for their whole education and their post-education career from what they start to learn there. It's just absolutely great. I really appreciate it. I wish we had room for a lot more, because it would really open up the doors, I think, for a lot of other kids.
thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. Just provide 2 quick comments. Sometimes ready for kinder means the parents are ready to send them. And that's not happening in every school district in Washington. The decrease in student enrollment, particularly in the Puget Sound areas, in that K-2 bubble, parents are choosing to keep their kids home
Wow.
post-COVID, and it's having a significant impact on the finances of school districts. And so we're so fortunate to have a program that people want to be part of. The other one, a comment that Jennifer mentioned, and I was doing a little bit of research while she continued with the presentation, her comment about recess and not taking recess away from particular students. Senate Bill 5257 in Washington was focused on recess, and the primary piece of that was around 30 minutes of recess for every elementary kid. But there's another component in there that requires WASDA to develop a policy that districts should implement in 24-25 that discourages taking recess from kids, making it a punitive thing. So probably the most progressive recess legislation in the country, and something we'll have to deal with and manage in the next little bit, but right in alignment with the thinking, like, don't take recess from that kid because they really need it.
Yes.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay, we'll go on to E1, policy review. I see we're finally in the 5,000s. We're getting close to being finished. This is just the first reading. They'll come back up for the second reading, I believe the next meeting on the 12th. So if you get a chance to read them, if you see any questions on them. F1, upcoming events. Very busy next 2 weeks. Starting with tomorrow. Everybody remembers the special board meeting?
Yep.
Tomorrow at 11.
Yep, I have it on my calendar.
And then OHS graduation on the 2nd. We've got our board members set for that one. DOHS graduation.
Marisa, do you have, who's doing DOHS graduation? Do you know?
I'm doing,
Yes, Sharon.
Sharon is?
I won't be here.
Is it me? I can't remember. For the things that we're supposed to be at, will you send a calendar invite? Thank you. Thank you a million times for all you do.
Yes. You might kind of send just a little update on all of the events, a little calendar reminder.
Yeah.
Because there is so many, and there's other activities too. We got a lot of parents here. MMS promotion. And then we got of course, our next board meeting on the 12th. And then the last day of school is coming up. And then the last meeting of the month is June 26th. Is there anything else there that needs to be added to the calendar at this moment?
I don't think so.
I don't think
We
so.
have everything handled we need for the 26th, right? Okay.
Okay, we'll go on to F2, board self-assessment. I think the content of tonight's meeting was very informational.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciated the two presentations tonight.
Yep,
They were
very
Wonderful.
thorough,
informative for me.
very thorough
Yep.
for the safety and for preschool. I mean, you think about how many students are at our preschool,
86.
186, under 200 students. And then you see the amount of information that we got on those students. Like, there's a lot of care in, not just care, but very thorough. And a ton of time invested in the research behind what they're doing. So appreciate that. And our safety one was just
Mhm.
as thick.
Yep.
So I know that they're taking a lot of time and effort in putting in that, so appreciate that. That was really good.
I think these are probably also both two areas that we would get a lot of questions about out in the community. And
Yep.
so, especially being new, I really appreciate a lot of this information because then I can have that knowledge to answer questions when they come up.
Yeah, you're right. I would say those are two big community topics, is what is our preschool doing and what are we doing about safety?
Of course, it was nice to have Gael tonight.
Yep.
Sorry it's your last night, but I know you got bigger and greater things in front of you.
Mm-hmm. And we want updates on your life as you go on. Good. appreciated the update on Mr. and Mrs. Brault and them getting that award and being recognized at the CWASA. What? SWASA?
Something
I don't
with a
know.
bunch of letters.
Sounds like swastika, and I don't like it, but it is what it is. SWASA.
Thank you for being here, Sebastian. We will see you next
Yes.
meeting. You replaced it.
Probably on the other side, I failed to mention that Talia would not be at tonight's
Oh.
meeting, but she is with a high cap group
Okay.
on a visit to Tacoma today.
Yep, not home yet.
Yeah.
Oh,
supposed
they're
to get
back.
home at
Okay.
8.
Okay, any more to add to that tonight?
A very well-planned agenda.
Yes.
Sharon, 2 meetings in a row, you haven't said it. What's happening?
I was letting you. Say it next week.
Okay. Executive session, the board will recess into executive session for 30 minutes to discuss the performance of a public employee. No action will be taken following the executive session. We'll take a 3-minute recess and meet back in Pete's office.
Yep.